All right, thank you guys, and welcome to our NBA video here today for Tuesday, January 5th, 2022. And if you're new here, I just want to take a quick time out and welcome you to my channel. My name is Brock Page, and I do sports picks for free right here on YouTube. And if you end up liking what you see here today, please feel free to give this video a thumbs up by smashing that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please feel free to hit that subscribe button as well and join the Brock Page family. I'd love to connect with you on a daily basis. And with that, guys, let's go ahead and dive into some NBA action here today. Pretty substantive slate. Got ourselves a bunch of games, so this should be a pretty long video. Looking maybe about a half an hour video here today. But anyway, let's go ahead and dive into it with the Pistons taking on the Hornets, 7 o'clock Eastern start time. Now, Charlotte is minus 10 with the total at 228. And following another disappointing day of premium sports picks on BrockPage.com yesterday, we are still 4-2 in our last 6 board member tier package picks on that very same website. And the good news is we have another board member tier package pick going off here today. And if you sign up for my board member tier package here today, it's actually going to work out to be just $1.85 a day all the way through the end of January. Certainly good value there. Now, if you don't feel like spending that much, we also have ourselves a $1.99 daily best play where we are currently 9-4 in our last 13 picks in that very category as well. And if you sign up for our $1.99 daily best play here today, the math works out to be just 7 cents a day all the way through the end of January as well. But when it comes to this Detroit-Charlotte game here, it's actually the Hornets who've had little problem putting points up on the scoreboard this season. And as a matter of fact, these guys are currently in the top 3 in the entire NBA in scoring on average per contest. And of course, they're led by LaMelo Ball, who's dropping nearly 20 points a game along with 7 boards and 7 assists. Now, Ball is also draining nearly 40% of his three-pointers. He's kind of a threat anywhere on the court. He can drive, he can shoot long range. Certainly, I think Melo has surpassed a lot of expectations from a lot of people. Meanwhile, Melo's teammate, Miles Bridges, he's dropping over 19.5 points a night himself, along with 7 rebounds and 3 assists. Now, the Hornets are currently leading the NBA in home offensive three-point percentage. They're also 11-3 against the spread at the Spectrum Center, so cashing in on a lot of tickets when they play at home. Now, they're taking on a Detroit squad who's winning just 16% of their road games this season. Detroit's also averaging just 101 points a night, and they're shooting just 31% from beyond the arc. Now, when it comes to the injury report, Joseph Stewart and Livers, they are listed as out. Meanwhile, Jeremy Grant, he is still out for the Pistons as well. Meanwhile, for Charlotte on the other side of things, they're mostly healthy themselves, although Washington and Lewis are questionable, and Carey has been ruled out. Now, total-wise, Charlotte's seen 64% of their ball games at the Spectrum Center get over the posted number. Meanwhile, Detroit saw contests with San Antonio, Miami, and Houston recently get over the line themselves. I'm going to go ahead and lean towards Charlotte, minus 10, and the over 228. Next ball game, it is going to be Rockets versus the Wizards, 7 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Washington is minus 7, totals 226.5. Now, the Wizards have gone 6-1 against the spread in their last 7 ball games. Red hot against the number here over the past few weeks or so. Washington's also 10-6 straight up at the Capital One Arena, so playing some pretty good basketball at home. Now, Bradley Beal's averaging 24 points a game along with 4 rebounds and 6 assists. Meanwhile, teammate Kyle Kuzma is dropping 14.5 points a night along with 8 boards and a couple assists as well. Now, Washington's covering in 69% of their home games. So like I said earlier, a lot of good stuff happening for Washington and their backers when they're home. Now, they've also shot the ball fairly well from mid-range this year as well, as they're currently in the top 5 in offensive field goal percentage. They're taking on a Houston club who's on an 8-game losing streak themselves, and they also dropped 18 out of their last 21 road games. These guys have been terrible on the road. Now, defensively, the Rockets are giving up 117 points per contest when they travel. And they're also in the bottom 3 in defensive field goal percentage on the road as well. Now, injury-wise, Wood and Porter are questionable. Brooks and Sengun are out. Meanwhile, for the Wizards, Harrell, Holiday, Wanamaker, and Hachimura, they are sitting this one out for them. And when it comes to the total in this one, Washington went 70% to the over in their last 10 ball games. Meanwhile, Houston saw 9 out of their last 10 themselves fall under the line as well. I'm going to lean toward the Washington Wizards -7 in the under 226.5. Next matchup, it is going to be Sixers versus the Magic, 7 o'clock Eastern start time. Philadelphia is -8.5, totals 212. Now the Sixers are on a 4-game winning streak, and they averaged 119 points a night during that particular stretch. Now Philly's also playing their best basketball on the road this year, as they're currently 13-8 straight up in their contests away from home. Joel Embiid scoring 26.5 points per contest, along with double-digit rebounds. Meanwhile, Tobias Harris is scoring over 18 points a night himself, along with 7 boards and 3 assists. Now, defensively, on the other side of things, the Sixers are in the top 10 in fewest road points allowed. They're taking on an Orlando team who's on a 6-game losing streak, and they're also winning just 13% of their home games. They are absolutely terrible at the Amway Center. Now, the Magic scores fewer points per contest at home than any other team in the NBA. Meanwhile, defensively, on the other end of the court, they're also dead last in the NBA in guarding the 3-ball at home as well. So these guys have been terrible on both ends of the court, at home. Just nothing going right for these guys. Now, injury-wise, Lopez, Moore, and Carter Williams, they're all still out. Meanwhile, Wagner and Anthony are questionable. Meanwhile, for the Sixers, on the other side of things, Milton, Reed, Maxey, and Springer are out for them. Thibault and Powell are listed as questionable. When it comes to the number in this one, Philly saw 3 out of their last 4 ball games get over the line. Meanwhile, Orlando went 4-2 to the over in their last 6 themselves. I'm going to lean toward Philadelphia -8.5 in the over 212. Next ball game, it is going to be Warriors versus the Mavericks, 7:30 Eastern tip-off. Golden State is -6, totals 213.5. And although the Warriors continue to roll, they did fail to cover against Miami, Denver, and Toronto here recently. Now, Golden State has also had a tough time with Dallas in recent meetings, losing 7 out of their last 10 contests against the Mavs. So if you're into historical trends, you may want to think about firing on Dallas in this one. And although there's really not much bad you can say about this Warriors team right now, they do tend to give up ample points early in ball games. They're currently in the bottom 10 in the NBA in first quarter points allowed. Now, they are taking on a Dallas club who's on a 3-game winning streak themselves, and they also have a winning record at home. And as a matter of fact, we're looking at a Dallas Mavericks team who's limiting their competition to just 103 points per contest against them in the American Airlines Center. And of course, when you're mentioning the Mavs, especially when you're mentioning scoring, well, Luka Doncic, he obviously comes to mind, as he's averaging over 24.5 points per contest, along with 8 boards and 8 assists. Meanwhile, teammate Jalen Brunson, he's scoring over 16 points a game himself, along with 3 boards and 5 assists as well. Now, Dallas has successfully covered the point spread in 6 out of their last 8 meetings with a Pacific Division opponent. So if you're into historical trends, or just quirky trends for that matter, certainly think about that one there. Now, when it comes to the COVID list, Thomas, Porzingis, Cauley-Stein, and Boban, they are out due to the virus. Meanwhile, for Golden State, Iguodala is questionable tonight with a knee. And when it comes to the scoring in this one, Golden State is 63% to the under in their road games. Meanwhile, Dallas is 13-4 to the under in front of their home crowd. I'm going to go ahead and lean toward Dallas +6 and the under 213.5. All right, next ball game. This is going to be a game of interest. I'm talking about the Nets versus the Pacers, 7:30 p.m. Eastern start time. The Nets are -8 with the total at 225. And of course, with this particular ball game here, all eyes are going to be on Kyrie Irving as he's been cleared to play in road games this season. We're going to see a lot of opinions and a lot of attention on Kyrie and this particular ball game. And despite Brooklyn's current skid, they're still 13-3 straight up when traveling. This is one of the best road teams in the entire NBA. They play great basketball when they travel. KD's averaging nearly 30 points per contest this year, along with 7 boards and 5 assists. Meanwhile, James Harden is scoring over 22.5 points a game, along with 8 rebounds and 9 assists as well. And speaking of offense, the Nets are arguably the best road shooting team in the NBA. They're draining nearly 40% of their three-pointers away from home. They currently lead the NBA in road offensive field goal percentage. Now they're taking on a Pacer team who will probably go to work here this evening without Malcolm Brogdon and Jeremy Lamb. Both have been downgraded to doubtful to play. Meanwhile, Warren and McConnell, they are still out. Craig, Batese, Martin, Duarte, and Jackson, they are questionable to play as well. Now the Pacers also find themselves in the heart of a 5-game losing streak right now, and they're also double-digit games below 500 for the entire season. Now, total-wise, 4 out of Indiana's last 5 ball games fell under the posted number. Meanwhile, Brooklyn, on the other side of things, they saw unders with Memphis, Philadelphia, and Orlando here recently. So with all that in mind, I'm going to lean toward Brooklyn -8 and the under 225. Next ball game, it is going to be Spurs versus the Celtics, 7:30 Eastern tip-off. Boston is -8 with the total at 222. But despite being the favorite in this one and laying a fairly large number, we're looking at a Boston team who failed to cover the number in 3 out of their last 4 ball games. And they also have a losing record against the spread at the Garden this year. Now, the Celtics have also struggled somewhat shooting the basketball, as they're currently in the bottom 10 in offensive field goal percentage. And they're also making only 33% of their three-pointers. So this is a team who really hasn't been shooting all that well this year. They're taking on a Spurs team who covered the number in 4 out of their last 7 despite their recent skid. And even though these guys have had a bit of a hard time defensively this season, well, they've certainly had little problems offensively, as they're currently in the top 10 in the entire association in scoring on average per game. They're also in the top 10 in shooting the 3 ball as well. DeJounte Murray's averaging over 17.5 points per contest, along with 8 boards and 8 assists. Meanwhile, Keldon Johnson is drilling over 43% of his three-pointers, and he's also scoring 14 points a game. And when it comes to rebounding the basketball, the Spurs are also in the top 5 in offensive rebounding. Now, injury-wise, McDermott and Walker are questionable for tonight's action. Meanwhile, for Boston on the other side of things, Parker, Tatum, Langford, and Nesmith, they are listed as questionable for them. When it comes to the total in this one, Boston saw 4 out of their last 7 ball games fall under the posted number. Meanwhile, San Antonio on the other side, they are 63% to the under when traveling this year. I'm going to lean towards San Antonio +8 and the under 222. Next ball game I have for you, it is going to be Thunder versus the Timberwolves, 8 o'clock Eastern start time. Minnesota's -7.5, totals 215. Now, Minnesota's been an absolute covering machine here recently. They're 3-0 against the spread in their last 3 straight, 80% against the number in their last 10. The T-Wolves have also played very good defensively at the Target Center, as they're currently in the top 5 in defensive field goal percentage at home. Now, Minnesota's also limiting their opponents to just 104 points a game in front of their home fans. Now, offensively, Anthony Edwards is scoring over 22 points per contest, along with 5 rebounds and 3.5 assists. Meanwhile, Malik Beasley is averaging over 12 points a game off the bench, along with 3 rebounds. Now, they're taking on an Oklahoma City team who lost 3 out of their last 4, and they find themselves winning only 29% of their road games. The Thunder scores fewer points per contest than any other team in the NBA, and they're also shooting just 29% from beyond the arc on the road. Certainly many issues, many problem areas for you if you're backing OKC in this one. Now, injury-wise, Lou Dort and Robinson Earl, they are both out with the virus. Gilgeous-Alexander and Bazley, they are questionable to play as well. Meanwhile, for Minnesota on the other side, Russell and Towns, they have been listed as questionable to play for them. When it comes to the total in this one, Minnesota's 13-7 to the under at the Target Center. Meanwhile, OKC's 10-7 to the under in their road games. I'm going to lean toward Minnesota minus 7.5 and the under 215. Next matchup, it is going to be Raptors versus the Bucks, 8 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Milwaukee is minus 7.5 at home with the total at 226. And speaking of the total in this one, this game's actually being featured as my board member tier package pick on BrockPage.com here this evening. So if you want to see whether I think this one's going to go over the posted number in an offensive shootout, or if I think this one's going to fall under the line in a defensive showdown, well, there's only one way to find out, and that's to sign up for my board member tier package pick on my website at BrockPage.com, where we are currently 4-2 in our last 6 picks in that category. But as far as picking a free winner in this one, let's go ahead and break down this game here real quick. It's actually the Bucks who won 6 out of their last 7 ball games, 13-6 straight up at the Fiserv Forum. Milwaukee's currently leading the NBA in offensive rebounding at home, and they're also in the top 5 in the league in scoring on average per game. Giannis Antetokounmpo, he's dropping over 27.5 points a night, along with 11 rebounds and 5 assists. Meanwhile, Jrue Holiday is scoring 18.5 points a game himself, along with 4 boards and 6 assists. Normally, we'd be mentioning Chris Middleton, but it's actually Jrue Holiday who has emerged as this team's second leading scorer. Now, when it comes to defensive play in this one, the Bucks are in the top 3 in the NBA in defensive field goal percentage at home. Now, they're taking on a Toronto team who may be a little groggy here this evening as they're in the second of a back-to-back. And although the Raptors have played quite well over the past week or so, they've done a fairly lackluster job of guarding the 3-ball this year, as they're currently in the bottom 10 in defensive 3-point percentage. Now, when it comes to guarding shots from the field, well, the Raptors currently find themselves in the bottom 10 in defensive field goal percentage away from home as well. So with all those factors in mind, I do think the Bucks should be able, to cover the 7.5 at home here. So with all that said and done, I'm going to lean toward Milwaukee minus 7.5, getting the job done against the number. All right. Next ball game I have for you, it is going to be Hawks versus the Kings. That's going to be a 10 o'clock Eastern start time in Sacramento. Now, Sacramento is the 1-point favorite with the total at 229.5. Now, the Kings got the W in 3 out of their last 5 ball games, with victories over the likes of Miami, Dallas, and OKC during that span. Sacramento's also done a real nice job of scoring early in games as well, as they currently find themselves in the top 10 in first quarter scoring at home. De'Aaron Fox is averaging over 20.5 points a game, along with 3 boards and 5 assists. Meanwhile, Harrison Barnes is drilling 42% of his shots from downtown, 16 points a night for Barnes. Now they're taking on an Atlanta club who lost 7 out of their last 10, and they may have to go to work here tonight without their leading scorer, Trae Young. Trae is actually battling, he's questionable. He's battling a back injury. It's non-COVID related. He's got a legitimate injury. So keep an eye on Trae's status. Once again, he is questionable. And I'll tell you what, speaking of the injury report, Collins, Deng, Bogdanovich, and Johnson, they're actually all sitting this one out due to COVID. They're in health and safety protocols. And even when they're mostly healthy, Atlanta's covering in just 36% of their road games. They currently rank in the bottom 10 in points allowed per contest. Now, total-wise, the Hawks did see their last 4 straight all get over the posted number, 11-8 to the over in all of their road games. Meanwhile, Sacramento went 4-2 to the over in their last 6 ball games themselves. I'm going to go ahead and lean toward Sacramento -1 in the over 229.5. Next ball game. It is going to be the Jazz versus the Nuggets, and that's going to be a 10 o'clock Eastern start time. Utah is -3.5 on the road, numbers 222. Now the Jazz went 7-1 straight up in their last 8 ball games. 13-3 straight up on the road this year. They're one of the better road teams in the association. Now Utah allows fewer points per contest on the road than any other team in the NBA. And they're also limiting their competition to just 30% shooting from 3 land when they travel. Now, when it comes to the scoring in this one, offensively, Donovan Mitchell's averaging over 25.5 points a game, along with 3 rebounds and 5 assists. Meanwhile, Bojan Bogdanovic, he's been really good from downtown. He's shooting 43% from beyond the arc, and he's averaging 17 points a game. And speaking of scoring, the Jazz are averaging more points per contest on the road than any other team in the association. They're taking on a Denver squad who failed to cover in 4 out of their last 6. And they're also scoring only 104 points a game at the Ball Arena. Certainly some offensive struggles at home. Now the Nuggets have also got themselves a losing record against the number on their home court as well. When it comes to the injury list, Green, Morris, and Howard are out. Rivers and Nagy are questionable. Meanwhile, for the Jazz on the other side of things, Whiteside, Gobert, Bogdanovic, O'Neal, and Azubuike, they are listed as questionable for them. Now, total-wise, Utah saw games with New Orleans, Portland, and San Antonio recently fall under the posted number. They're also 69% to the under on the road. Meanwhile, Denver on the other side of things went 5-1 to the under in their last 6 themselves. I'm going to lean toward Utah -3.5. And the under 222. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our next and final matchup for the show. It is going to be Heat versus the Blazers, 10 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Miami is -1, totals 216.5. Despite the absence of Jimmy Butler here this evening for Miami, just keep in mind that the struggling Blazers on the other side are going to work without their leading scorer, Damian Lillard. Now, the Blazers lost 7 out of their last 10 ball games, and they also successfully covered the point spread in only 30% of those contests I just mentioned. And although the Blazers have done a decent job of scoring points this season, they're actually dead last in the league in defensive field goal percentage. Now, they're taking on a Miami team who's done a really nice job of battling through injuries and COVID here recently, as they actually got the W in 7 out of their last 10 ball games. And once again, despite the absence of Jimmy Buckets here tonight, well, we're looking at a Miami squad who's been holding their opponents to just 104 points a game overall for the season. Now, scoring-wise, when it comes to the offense in this one, Tyler Hero's averaging over 20 points a game, along with 4 rebounds and 4 assists. Hero's also been very good from, shooting the long ball. He's drilling nearly 40% of his 3 balls. Meanwhile, Kyle Lowry, his teammate Kyle Lowry, he's averaging nearly 14 points a game himself, along with 4 boards and 8 assists. When it comes to the injury report, Haslam, Butler, Robinson, Okpala, Vincent, and Garrett, they're all out for tonight's contest. Meanwhile, for Portland, Lillard and Zeller are out. Nance is doubtful. When it comes to the number in this one, Portland's last 2 straight got over the posted total, 60% to the over in their last 10. Meanwhile, Miami's 14-8 to the over when they traveled themselves. I'm going to lean toward Miami -1 and the over 216.5. And with that, guys, we're going to go ahead and jump into our quick pick recap, powered to you by my website at brockpage.com, where we are currently 4-2 in our last 6 board member tier package picks. I like Charlotte minus 10 over 228. Washington minus 7 under 226.5. Philadelphia minus 8.5 over 212. Dallas plus 6 under 213.5. Brooklyn minus 8 under 225. San Antonio plus 8 under 222. Minnesota minus 7.5 under 215. I also like the Milwaukee Bucks minus 7.5, getting the job done against the number. I like Sacramento minus 1 over 229.5. Utah Jazz minus 3.5 under 222. And before I give you my next and final free pick for the video, one final reminder that we are also 9-4 in our last 14 $1.99 daily best plays on my website at brockpage.com. I'm going to lean toward Miami minus 1 in the over 216.5. And with that, guys, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on brockpage.com. If you guys do end up getting a membership here today on my website, just keep in mind you're going to get billed the day you sign up and then the first of every month following that. So if you do end up getting a membership here today on brockpage.com, you're going to get access to that content all the way through the end of January. You're going to get access to those picks all the way through the end of the month. I always tell folks in every single video, the earlier in the month you sign up, the better. And I was talking about my board member tier earlier in the video. Guys, board members get access to every single pick that I give out on my website all the way through the end of January as well. So not only are you going to get the board member pick itself here today, you're going to get access to every single pick that I give out on that website all the way through the end of January. But most importantly, guys, got to thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. I really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. And with that said, guys, happy Wednesday to you. Happy hump day to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my website at brockpage.com.